At my mother's funeral, her nurse pulled me aside and whispered 4 words that shattered everything I thought I knew about my own life. You were never hers. I laughed nervously. Certain grief had confused her. It hadn't. Diane had worked at the hospital where I was born 30 years earlier, and what she told me next meant nothing about my identity had ever been what I assumed. Diane explained there had been a mix-up in the nursery that same night. 2 baby girls swapped briefly, returned to the wrong mothers by accident. My mother discovered it within hours, and chose to say absolutely nothing for the rest of her life. I demanded proof, unwilling to believe my entire identity had been quietly decided in a hospital nursery 3 decades earlier without my knowledge. Diane gave me a name, Rebecca Cole, the other family involved, still living 1 town over according to old hospital records she'd somehow kept all these years. My hands shook, dialing information, requesting a number, rehearsing sentences that made me sound significantly less unhinged than I actually felt about what I was about to say to a complete stranger over the phone. Rebecca answered on the 3rd ring, confused by a stranger's voice mentioning hospitals and nurseries and 30-year-old secrets, but something in her tone shifted the moment I mentioned my birth date. My mother always said I looked nothing like her, she said slowly. She used to joke about it at family dinners like it was funny. It hadn't been a joke, it had been an unspoken confession. We agreed to meet, 2 strangers approaching each other cautiously outside a coffee shop, searching each other's faces for features that felt more familiar than they should have. Rebecca had my exact eyes, my exact stubborn jawline, features I'd always assumed came from a father I barely remembered. Instead, apparently they came from a woman I was meeting for the very first time at 30. DNA testing confirmed everything within 2 weeks. Rebecca and I weren't just similar, we were biological sisters to our actual birth mothers, swapped completely at birth through a clerical nightmare neither family had ever been formally told about. My mother had known, chosen silence, and raised another woman's daughter as her own for 30 years without a single word of explanation. I confronted my father, the only surviving parent left who might explain her decision. He admitted he'd known too, had begged her repeatedly over the decades to tell me the truth, eventually giving up when she refused every single time. She loved you completely, he said carefully. She was terrified telling you would somehow make that love feel less real. It hadn't occurred to her silence might do worse. Rebecca's parents, it turned out, had suspected something for years but never pursued formal testing, quietly choosing denial over disruption, comfortable enough in the family they'd already built together. 2 sets of parents, separately, had made the exact same devastating choice, protecting the families they knew instead of the daughters biology had actually assigned them at birth. Rebecca and I spent months afterward untangling which parts of our lives felt like genuine identity versus environment, nature versus the 30 years of nurture that shaped us into completely different people, despite matching DNA. We weren't interchangeable strangers who'd simply switched addresses. We were 2 fully formed adults, discovering biological family shockingly late in life. I don't regret learning the truth, even mourning the version of my life I'd assumed was straightforward for 3 uncomplicated decades. My mother's silence wasn't cruelty, I've come to believe. It was fear disguised as protection, a decision made in a hospital hallway that quietly shaped 2 entire families without either fully choosing it. Rebecca calls me her sister now. I'm still learning what that means. So here's my question for you. If you found out your parents knew the truth for 30 years and said nothing, would you forgive them? I said I would, eventually, but it took time I didn't expect to need. Comment yes or no below, and